So welcome. Tonight we're going to go through this using OAuth with APIs lab, or I guess README. I have some code along with it. I guess it's a lab. We'll be using the Foursquare API and looking at it. Apologies if I sound a little bit mumbled or a little bit off. I'm getting over, I don't know, a cold, flu, something. And I have a cough left over, so I'm trying to suck on a cough drop so I don't cough in your speakers, your ears throughout this entire thing. But that's gonna make me fumble a little bit with my words. So we'll just step through this and yeah. So today we're expanding on the coffee shop example and using OAuth with the Foursquare API. It's going to perform actions on behalf of an individual user. So until now, we've been authenticating to APIs at the application level using a client ID/secret pair with each request. So, you know, we register our app with an API, we get an ID and a secret pair, and we use that API key to send a request to get data back. The application level. This level of application authentication is important in that it allows the API provider to ensure good behavior by any client application. So if you're doing things you're not supposed to, they shut off your key and you can't get access anymore. So, you know, they lock you out. Application level authentication like this gives us access to application level functions, for instance, venue search. This is an application level function because you don't need to be any particular user to search for a coffee shop. In fact, if we look at the venue search API documentation, we see an entry requires acting user no at the top. I should have this. Here we are. Yeah, user or userless authentication. This is what it's talking about, userless authentication. I know Foursquare has changed their documentation some, so I think the README might be a little bit off in its exact wording. But yeah, that's what it's talking about there. Compare that to the documentation for list friends, and we see that the function does require an acting user, which makes sense. I guess I can just open these links here. Authentication, user authentication required for this one, because we want to know that, you know, Foursquare is guarding the friends of a person. So they're not going to let any application have access to that information unless that application is granted from that user. So if we want to show our user what their friends are doing, we need a way of authenticating the user to Foursquare through our application. It's not enough for a user to be logged into Foursquare and use our app, because Foursquare needs to know that we are acting on behalf of a user, and that the user has allowed that action. And that's why whenever you do OAuth authentication with anything, if you were just signing up for the Foursquare API using Facebook as your OAuth or something else, you'll see that screen that always pops up that tells you what the application is going to have access to, and if you want to allow that or not. And sometimes, I know I've done in the past, you can turn off some of those things. So you don't have to explicitly always allow all those things for applications to work. So a lot of times they're requests, but you can deny those requests. So if you see something pop up and it's like, we want to have, you know, your phone number, and you're like, why do you need my phone number? You can, you know, turn that off and see what happens. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but there is an option there that I think a lot of people don't realize they have that choice. We could write some code to log in on behalf of the user, but that would require us to ask the user for their Foursquare login credentials. Think about that as if you're the user. Are you going to give some random website your login and password for Foursquare? The very thought should make you very suspicious of our motives, like Fry over here. Oh, I was going to say it just paused. Okay, there we go. Beyond the security issues, there's a problem of keeping things up to date. If we ask the user to log into Foursquare on every request, that's a horrible experience. People won't use our apps if they have to do that. However, if we store the user's Foursquare login info, we have whole other problems. The first thing is that we'd have to store them unencrypted in plain text because Foursquare expects the person to log in with their unencrypted credentials. So we have another security problem. Now we have a database full of unencrypted Foursquare credentials waiting for anyone to get in there and grab them all. Beyond the security issue is a logistical one. If the user changes her password on Foursquare, we'll never know about it. Our app will break. Now she has to update her Foursquare credentials in 2 places, which is cumbersome to say the least. Enter OAuth. So how do we authenticate a user without them entering their username and password into our application? That is OAuth. OAuth provides a way for one application to authenticate to another on behalf of a user by means of a revocable, expirable token. If our application has a Foursquare token for the user, and someone gets access to our database of tokens, all of them can be revoked and a hacker never gets access to individual user credentials. So let's say we do have our app and it's using Foursquare OAuth. We're going to see how we get the credentials and how they're used, but we're going to just have a whole bunch of tokens in our database associated with our users. And if a hacker gets our database and gets all of that information, all we're going to have to do is log into our control panel, probably even contact Foursquare, although we could probably, I would hope that we'd be able to do this by ourselves, and just revoke access to all the current tokens. And everybody's going to have to authorize again. However, all their data is going to be secure. An OAuth token also provides a standard way for our applications to tell Foursquare, hey, this user says we can do things for because part of implementing OAuth requires the user to take action on the provider, Foursquare in this case, explicitly authorizing our application. So OAuth has this kind of cool flow. It's not just like going there and clicking and coming back. I know it seems like that, but there's actually an extra relay in there. So the workflow involves 3 steps at a high level. First, request access from the provider site. So, you click that link that says Facebook or Google or Twitter or GitHub or whatever. And then we go there and we get that page. It's like, hey, do you authorize whoever this app to access your account? And we're like, yes, okay. Then 2, redirect back to our site with a code. Right then, you get sent back to that site. And let's say we're dealing with Foursquare. Foursquare sends the token. And then, or the code. So they send a code back to our site. Then we take that code that they just sent to our application, to our site, and we use it and send it right back to Foursquare. And we say, hey, here's the code you just sent us, and we're sending it back to you. And we want to use that code for you to authorize us. And then Foursquare sends a token back at the end of all that and that's what we save. So the reason being that that code has a really, really short expiration time, because Foursquare knows, okay, if I'm talking with a web server, we should be able to communicate really, really, really fast. And we're going to do this so fast that even if somebody's in the middle listening and they intercept that code, they're not going to have enough time to intercept that code, pretend to be this other website, send it to us in an amount of time before it expires. So it's actually really, really, really secure. Although I'm also not a security expert, but my understanding, it's really secure because it happens so fast that it's almost impossible to get in the middle, pluck that out of the air, send it back to Foursquare before the intended app gets a chance to, and grab those credentials maliciously. And here's a section on Foursquare's API section talking about user auth, web applications. We direct users to a Foursquare URL with our redirect URI. You have to register that. So we put the application ID and the redirect URI. When the user accepts, it sends it back to our website's URL that we tell it to with the code. Then we take that code and we send an ID, a secret, another redirect, and a code. And then finally the response comes back as JSON. And it says access token, it gives us the token. Then we can access all of the endpoints using that token. Right there. So first thing you want to do is figure out if the user has already authenticated to Foursquare in this session. Cool. So let's get to our code. I think I have, yeah, looks like bundle is done. All right, yeah, no tests here. Okay, so we want to figure out if a user has already authenticated to Foursquare in this session. Ultimately, users will be considered logged in, quote unquote. They have an access token stored in their session. So let's create a private method in our application controller. Sorry, apologies if you can hear me crunching that. Okay. And this method is going to be called logged in. Private. Okay. Now we'll return false if session token is nil and true otherwise. So we're going to use our double bang here. What the double bang does is, it's not the best way to do this, but it is a good kind of just way to get it in there. I know some people who are really against using it. I know some people who say use it whenever you want. But I think there's some edge cases where it doesn't work exactly right, but pretty much that's going to tell you if something is true or false. So if you have like a string, the first bang is, the negation of it. So if a string is true, if it's an actual word and it would be true, it's going to come back false. And then you negate it again and it comes back true. So it's a way to get the Boolean value of something. That double bang is. It's a pretty nifty thing to know about and use. Like I said, I wouldn't use it everywhere. I know some people think it's bad practice. So if you end up working for one of those people and it's something that it's your go-to, might be a little difficult to learn some new things. So put it in the toolbox, but it shouldn't be your only method of figuring that out. Next, the first step in OAuth flow is to direct the user to Foursquare to request access if we haven't already. So according to the docs, let's get back to our URL looks like this. User auth, we're going to skip iOS and Android apps. So this is step one. I'm going to send them somewhere. Part of the URL includes passing a redirect URI parameter. So we'll need to set that up. So update your Foursquare app. So we need to do one of those. I should be logged in. Yep. Let's create an app for this. Our OAuth lab. I wonder if it's, oh yeah, cars. Oh, that was simpler than I thought. So let's do localhost 3000 for the actual app. Sandbox. If you're just looking to try out places, okay. Yeah, because that's the free one. Cool. redirect. Here we go. So let's set the redirect to this and save the app. Save changes. Okay. By the way, I never actually do this. Put your client ID and client secret out there into the world like I'm doing because this is going to be recorded and uploaded to the web. I'm promptly going to delete this application as soon as we're done recording. Okay. Because we're going to be using our client ID secret a lot, instead of typing it, let's use a .env file to hold our Foursquare client and Foursquare secret values. Once that's set up, we'll be able to access these values as env Foursquare client ID and env Foursquare client or Foursquare secret, which is much easier to keep track of. Follow the instructions to set up .env and add your app's client ID and secret. Don't forget to restart your server after you change any values in .env. Top tip, and this goes across all programming languages, this .env file. It's implemented in many different ways. Just yesterday? What's today? Wednesday? Just yesterday, I was using a .env file in a React project. And it was being utilized with Webpack. And there was a Webpack.env npm module. So there's .env is a standard. It isn't always prefixed like this with env. However, it is a standard. So let's go through doing this. .env is a great way to keep configuration variables for development, but always remember to add .env to your git ignore so you don't share your secrets with everyone else. Like I was saying, we don't want to put our files out there into version control. If we share .env, if we end up sharing our secrets and keys, it can be very, very bad. Some of the worst case scenarios are if you have a mail server or if you have AWS keys in there, somebody can hijack your email or hijack your AWS account and just load it up with their stuff and rack up a ridiculous amount of charges in a small amount of time. I've heard stories of people getting, 6-figure AWS bills because they committed a secret key to GitHub by accident. And there's people who actively are malicious and searching GitHub all the time to find when those keys are uploaded so they can use them and exploit them. So we want to make sure in our git ignore, we have .env in there so it won't go up to GitHub. If you're using a different version control system, just add it to whatever ignore there is for you. The only other one that I've ever really known about is TFS, which is by Microsoft, and it's a .tf ignore file. I just learned about that one today. Okay, .env, and we need to set up these variables. So we also need, let's see, gem file. Okay, we don't have .env in here. So let's add .env. Find it real quick. .env Rails looks right. Autoload.env in Rails. And yeah, almost 10 million downloads. I'm thinking this is the one. All right. And I'm just going to put it up here. Gem.env Rails. I'm going to throw that just only in our development and test. Well, I guess, I don't know. Maybe production's fine too. I guess I don't have to worry about that. We're just doing a lab. That should be fine. Okay, so let's bundle again. Excuse me. Okay, cool. Some new stuff in here. Now we can set up these variables. So let's see, what were they again? Client ID and secret. And these are very straightforward. You just set them equal to what they need to be. Client ID. Client secret. And now they'll be available for us in our app using this syntax, env. Excuse me. All right, so this should handle everything we need to make this first request. So now we need to set up the redirect. So we need to write another private method and our application controller called authenticate user. All right, let's do that. I personally like typing out all of these things just for muscle memory and such. I don't know, I found it helps me over time. So let's see. Authenticate user. So client ID equals Foursquare client ID redirect URI equals CGI dot escape. Access slash host 3000 auth. Foursquare URL. To authenticate client ID equals, now we'll do some string interpolation here. Response type code and redirect URI equals redirect URI, and then redirect to Foursquare URL unless logged in is true. Excuse me. Let's see what a Foursquare route is, if we have one in there. Oh, we do. Search is Foursquare. Okay. So that is coming directly from here. So that's the link that we just built, where we're throwing a person to the Foursquare URL unless we know that they're already logged in when we call this authenticate user method. And then we need to set up this before action, one thing that missed. So this is going to call authenticate user. before anything else. Cool. All right, let's go back to our README. Once you've implemented authenticate user, set the authentication as a before action in your application controller, which we just did. In your sessions controller, skip the before action with skip before action, authenticate user, only create. So that's saying, let's go to our sessions controller. Now, whenever users do not have an access token stored in their session, they will be redirected to the Foursquare authorization URL. So what we're saying is we're going to skip it only on the create route, because if we're doing a create, then we know that, you know, we don't want that to happen. Let's start the rail server and try to hit the search page. All right, let's see what happens. All right, localhost 3000. And that did our before action for us. So we see we don't have to go only to that route. Let's see. There we go. We see this is our Foursquare OAuth page, Flatiron OAuth Lab. The name of our app pops up there. Here's the website link that we put in the bottom left-hand corner. We can see that, localhost 3000. And I'm pretty sure we could change maybe a couple things in here if we really added them in. Our app doesn't have any of this stuff filled in right now. Privacy policy and such. Which would all, I believe, populate in here if they were there. Just get redirect to Foursquare. Hit the allow button. Let's see what happens. Error. Narrow route matches get auth. Okay. That's good. That means it's working so far. Now we need to implement step 2. So like I said, it's not just saying allow and then going back. It's going to send a code back to our server. Our server is going to immediately bounce that code back to Foursquare. Foursquare is going to verify it's the code it just sent, say okay, and then send back a key that we save and use. So in register application, you set the redirect URL. This is where Foursquare is sending users after the login process. Now we need to handle that request. So in our routes, we need to add the route to get that. So let's set that up. I think we might be done here. I'm gonna just minimize that. Let's go to our routes. Right now we're not handling that, so let's do that. Get auth to sessions create. This will route that redirect to our sessions controller and a create action, which is where we'll get the token. So now let's implement that. I wasn't supposed to think that. Create. All right. Back to our handy documentation. Foursquare redirects users with a code that can be accepted through params. It's coming back with a param of code. In exchange for an access token with a second GET request, we'll need to provide our ID, secret, and the code we just got. We're going to use Faraday to send this request in our controller action. If all goes well, according to the docs, we can expect a JSON response with an access token. So we'll parse that and put it in our session token. Faraday is a gem. That just makes this easier to do, honestly. It's pretty straightforward, I think. So I won't go too deep into it. There's a reason even the lesson doesn't go too deep into it. It just mentions it for further reading if you choose. But it's basically just making HTTP request for us and allowing us to attach some things to it. So we're going to set this up right now. All right. Response. Get. So we're making a get request. I always like to put my ends of any block so I never forget them. So here we're passing some things back. Foursquare client ID. Oops, secret. Request params. Oops, not curly. Redirect. Right. All right. Finally, we have our code. That's the end of that part. We're going to parse. So the response is going to come as JSON. So we're going to parse that. We're going to set our session token. Redirect to root path. Okay. So now that this is all out there, let's go back and look. So what we're doing is we're making a GET request to this URL right here. And that's our first line of this response. Then we're saying, okay, tack on all of these params. So after this question mark, everything is a param. And then every and is a different param. So we're just setting those up. So we see client ID equals your client ID. So we have client, the param of client ID, and we set it. And we have a param of client secret, grant type, redirect, and code. So we have all of that. So what we're saying is we're going to get the code when the route is hit. It's going to be passed in as this params coming into the code, and then we're setting a bunch of other params to send back. Then as soon as we send that back, or that's going to return with a response. And that's why we're calling this response. So we make the GET request to the server. It returns a response, and that's the response. That's what this variable is equal to now. It should be equal to this JSON, access token, or what the access token is. So with that, we're going to set our body equal to that response. So we're just going to parse it, because it's not just going to be solely JSON. It's going to have some headers and some stuff, because it's traveling across the internet. And we're going to say, just give us the body of that, and the body is going to have just the JSON. Then we're going to say, okay, let's set our token for our session equal to the value of that access token key in the JSON. And then we're going to redirect to our root path. So that's stepping through all of that. Top tip, make sure to skip the authenticate user before action when you're creating a session. Otherwise, you'll end up in an infinite loop of trying to figure out who the user is, which is a very existential bug. Pretty sure this is fine the way it is, but we can just get rid of it. I think there's only going to be this create route anyway, to make it a little bit more, get rid of the extra, just syntax and verbiage there. All right. Use the access token to access the API. Now that users have their API tokens, they can make calls to all of the API endpoints as long as those tokens are included in the request. Back in our Foursquare auth docs, under the request section, let me use this thing. Under the request section, this is where I think they have changed the things around. Let's see. Let's see what we're looking for. We see that all we have to do now is add an OAuth token parameter to any request with the user's token. Oh, we're just talking about here at the end. Once you have access to an access token, you can use any of the endpoints just by adding OAuth token equals access token. So to your get or post request. For example, from the command line, we could do a curl, which is just command line, and just tack it on to the end, like such. Let's take a look at the friends documentation again. All right. Get the user's friends. And add a friends list to our application. First, let's add a route to friends. Okay, so let's get this route added first. And then handle that in our controller. All right, so we'll do both those things now. Routes. Get friends to searches friends. All right, then let's go to our searches controller. Oh, here, search. All right. So search. Oh no, we don't want search. We want friends. All right. Response. Foursquare.com, /v2, users, self, friends, do request. Request params, auth token, session token. And Foursquare has this thing where you have to use a version for versioning, so they don't just let you like get the most recent. You have to actually give them a date that you want of it. So let's do 01. Let's do the first. Okay. Top tip, like many API providers, Foursquare gives you a way to try API calls right from the documentation. Try it with the friends list. Okay. They used to. Let's see. Places, API. I think this is what they have now. Pilgrim, sample apps, resources. Yeah, I don't know that they have the sandbox anymore. Places database is for enterprise stuff. That's fine though. Okay, finally, let's set up our view. We'll do this, views, searches, friends. Only take a second. If friends dot size greater than 0, which I honestly don't know if I have any Foursquare friends. I'm sure I did at one point in time. So I guess, I don't know. I think I deleted them all, so maybe they're still there. Do. There we go. Friend. So we're gonna make a list of them. LI. Get our ERB going. Friend. First name. There we go. Wait. There. Friend. Okay, there we go. Last name. Then the close quotes. Then the close ERB tag, then the closing LI. Okay. Whew. And now we need to close the unordered list. And we're going to have our other half of our if with an else. P, looks like we don't have any Foursquare friends yet. And then our end. Whew, okay. Now load \friends, and just like that, they'll be there for you. Okay, let's see. \friends. \friends. Okay. So because we didn't complete it the first time through, we had an error. We're going back again. So let's allow. Okay, so it worked for OAuth. Let's see, friends. Something's wrong here. @friends, undefined method size for no class. Oh, we didn't send anything. Oh, we missed. Friends handling our actual response. Parse that response body. Friends items. Okay. Let's see now. Don't have any Foursquare friends yet. Boo-hoo. I didn't think I would, so. That's using OAuth with APIs. So the friends, that'll be there for us right there. So To recap, we learned that user authentication allows us to get access to things that a user will allow us to by talking to somebody who has an OAuth protocol in place. It allows us to keep track, not have to worry about keeping track of their actual login credentials for a different app or a different site. We just have to keep track of a key that that other site sends us, and that's it. So if they change their username, if they change their password, if they change stuff on another site, we don't have to worry about it. Our key is still associated with them there. We learned that using an env file is best practice so that we don't end up committing our secrets and API keys to versioning systems. Putting them out there for the public to find is always dangerous. People actively look for those to abuse them. We also learned that it's not just that one click where we say authorize, allow, yes. It's right then in that split second when we click that or a user clicks that, it's sending the code, and an app is sending that code immediately back, and then it's getting a response to that with the actual token. Use the access. And then using the access token is what we do from then on. Any questions that I could answer at this point in time? Comments, concerns, issues?
Is that token, does the token change the every time we make a request, or does it stay like for a certain time? Or
yes, so the token will stay for a certain time, typically, and it depends on the API and how they have it set up. Let's see if it says in here. Endpoints, let's see. Users, tips, check-ins, this. I know that, oh, here's, the Explorer is the thing that I was talking about before. Authentication. I know it's sometimes errors. Let's see. Invalid auth, param error, endpoint error, not authorized, rate limit, quota exceeded, deprecated server. I'm not sure what the expiration is on Foursquares. They might not have one. Or that might be something that they provide with okay, here, let's see. Response ID. Yeah, places and stuff. Now, at some point in time, I know I've seen other APIs that will have an expiration on the token. So you can call an API endpoint with that token just to get info about that token, and it'll tell you like when it was created, when it expires, and give you some information like that.
yeah.
So
once I have this connection set up, it's going. We are technically updating automatically. Am I correct, or the token?
I don't think the token automatically updates. I think if it times out, that has to be handled. And you can request a new token before it expires. I'm not sure the exact best ways to do that. But typically the token lengths, I mean, typically for things like OAuth, people know that what they're using them for. So like, if you think about something that you've authorized like through Facebook, like length on those tokens, like I don't think I've ever had to reauthorize unless like I clear all my cookies type of thing. They probably have really long expiration dates. just for that
Oh.
that reason. But they do expire eventually.
Okay. Okay.
But I think.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering. I just wanted to make sure if it expired or not.
Yeah, they do have expiration dates, so they're not forever.
Yeah.
But I think most of the common like user authentication systems, so like we'll handle that in the background for us. The library
Great.
as well.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
I really wonder if theirs expires though, because I think it would say somewhere. Zero results for expiration. Huh. Maybe it doesn't. Any other questions I can answer? Okay, if not, then thank you very much for coming out tonight, and hope you learned something, and yeah, have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot, sir.
You're welcome.
Bye.